Hey guys, tonight we board a ship that smells like fermented fruit, follow a barefoot god with no itinerary, and set sail into a story that's half divine voyage, half forgotten bar crawl. You're stepping onto a moonlit Greek harbor where the wood creaks, the sea glistens like spilled olive oil, and the night air is thick with the perfume of... Wait, is that oregano? Probably. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step cautiously onto a ship that looks sturdy enough, but smells suspiciously like it's been used for wine smuggling. Which, spoiler, it has. The crew, about a dozen rough-looking men with sun-bleached tunics and expressions that say, "We're absolutely up to something," barely glance at you. They're more focused on loading the last of the amphorae. You watch them wobble under the weight of clay jars, each sealed with wax and marked with what appears to be Dionysian script, looping chaotic letters that suggest either holy blessing or someone wrote it mid-somersault. The harbor behind you is half asleep. Lanterns flicker on docked ships, gulls tuck their beaks beneath their wings, and the taverns are quiet, except for one bard who's still singing to his ale, oblivious to the hour. A donkey brays in protest somewhere far off. Classic Greek ambiance. You look up at the moon, full and heavy like a wheel of goat cheese. It shines silver across the deck, reflecting off patches of brine and grape skins. The ship's wood is sticky in places. Not with seawater, definitely with wine. Every step you take feels like walking across the floor of a tavern just after last call. Then someone hiccups from below deck. The boat is already bobbing gently, ropes creaking with the rhythm of the tide, as if eager to leave without its captain. And speaking of which, there's no sign of him. Dionysus is late, naturally. You sit on a crate, which may or may not contain musical instruments, and glance at the horizon. The sea stretches out, velvet dark and strangely calm. You try not to imagine sea monsters, or wine-induced hallucinations, or wine-induced sea monsters. A voice nearby mutters something about cargo that drinks more than it sells. Another sailor snorts in response. They're clearly not expecting a peaceful journey, and that's when the god finally arrives. You don't hear him so much as feel the shift in mood, like someone just turned up the saturation on the night. Dionysus walks up the gangplank barefoot, trailing grapevines from his sleeves and somehow surrounded by the faint scent of cinnamon and roses. His robe is deep indigo, shot through with golden threads that shimmer like stars when he moves. Around his neck, a cluster of ivy leaves and a very sleepy squirrel. His eyes? Bright. Too bright. You blink and look again, and he's already pouring wine into a goblet that wasn't there a second ago. "Let's not overthink the route," he says, grinning like a man who's never read a map in his life. "The wind knows where we're going." The crew stares. One sailor subtly stashes the ship's chart under a barrel. The god of wine, madness, theater, and accidental decisions throws his arms wide and laughs, long and musical. You think to yourself, this might be the beginning of a religious experience. Or a lawsuit. A fringe historical tidbit for you. Some versions of Dionysus' legend suggest he actually invented the concept of leisure travel. Not war marching, not trade exploring, just drifting for the pleasure of it. He was basically the god of long cruises, minus the buffet. Historians still argue whether his mythical voyages influenced later real-world cult pilgrimages, or whether humans just always needed an excuse to drift and drink. You lean back as the boat creaks away from the dock. No oars yet. Just the slow push of the tide, like the sea's giving you a chance to change your mind. You don't. The harbor shrinks behind you. Lamps twinkle on shore. A fisherman waves lazily with one hand, holding a wriggling eel in the other. An owl circles once overhead, then disappears toward the cliffs. You settle in, uncertain whether you're passenger, witness, or future myth. On the deck, Dionysus hums a strange tune. You think it's in an ancient dialect you don't understand, but then you realize it's just out of tune. He pours a second cup of wine. No one's sure who it's for. And just as the stars begin to stretch across the sky like spilled salt, the first amphora cracks open. The scent of fermented grapes fills the air, warm, sweet, thick as honey, and with it a quiet sense of unreason. Not danger, not yet, just possibility. As the ship drifts deeper into the wine-dark sea, thanks, Homer, for that turn of phrase, you feel the stories gathering. In the corners of the deck, in the slosh of the waves, in the grin of a god who doesn't quite walk like he's standing still. And beneath your feet, you swear the wood hums. By the time you wake up, you've forgotten whether you actually fell asleep or if the ship just lulled your mind into something softer than consciousness. The sea is still dark, but the stars overhead have shifted. An unfamiliar constellation tilts overhead like a broken compass. Someone, somewhere on the deck, is playing a reed flute. Not well, but enthusiastically. You sit up slowly. Dionysus is lying on his back, one leg crossed over the other, swirling wine in a goblet as if it might reveal secrets. "Still lost?" he asks, grinning without looking at you. You blink at him. "We were never found," he adds very helpfully. You glance around. The ship no longer hugs the coast. You're in open water. Not terrifying open water, just open. There's no wind, but the sails are full. No one's steering, but the rudder groans occasionally, as if nudged by invisible hands. Dionysus doesn't seem worried, and honestly, neither does the crew, some of whom are now gently arguing about how many gods fit in a wine amphora. One says 5, one says none. One insists it depends on the region. You climb to your feet and squint at the horizon. There's a dark smudge in the distance. An island? A storm? A floating fig market? The crew doesn't know. Neither do you. Dionysus raises his goblet toward it and murmurs something that sounds like a toast and a dare. Here's your historical fact for this leg of the journey. Ancient Greek sailors, especially in the Aegean, were notoriously superstitious about open sea travel. They often hugged coastlines like a nervous child clings to a parent's leg. The farther out you went, the more you risked monsters, tempests, or, worst of all, losing track of Dionysus if he decided to wander off mid-trip. This was a real concern in festivals, too. Statues of the god would often go missing in rituals, and whole towns would pretend to look for him for days. Theater or theology? Historians still argue whether this was sacred pageantry or just a really drawn-out party excuse. You feel the boat shift again, not violently, just a gentle veering, like a yawn, like it remembered something important, just not urgently. You see crew members pulling out lyres, passing around dried figs, and chewing mint leaves to stay awake. One of them offers you a date stuffed with goat cheese. It's weirdly good, sleepy good. At some point, Dionysus decides it's time for storytelling, or prophecy, or something in between. He waves a hand, and suddenly the amphorae begin to shimmer, faint golden motes rising from their clay mouths. Not steam, not smoke. Memory, maybe. He starts talking, not loudly, not theatrically, just calmly, like you're all gathered around a fire. Except the fire is a ship, the night is bottomless, and no one remembers where they put the map. He tells the story of a sailor who once mistook him for a mortal and tried to sell him into slavery. The crew didn't get far. By the time they hit open sea, vines had burst from the planks. Dolphins swam alongside, and half the crew jumped overboard in panic, only to be turned into dolphins themselves. Dionysus chuckles. "They're still out there," he says, tipping his goblet. "Nice guys, mostly." You shiver, but not from cold. The air is oddly warm, too warm, like it's remembering the heat of every summer festival ever held in his honor. One sailor asks if that story is true. Dionysus shrugs. True enough for now. You lean against the rail, trying to steady your thoughts. The sea glows faintly beneath you. Bioluminescence? Magic? A leaking wine cargo hold? You don't know, and part of you doesn't want to. Here's a fringe tidbit to tuck under your pillow. Some late Hellenistic cults worshipped Dionysus not just as a god of wine and madness, but as a psychopomp, a guide for souls. Not quite like Hermes with his winged sandals, but still someone you'd meet at the edge of the world when logic ran out and dreams took over. In fact, certain tombs have been found with inscriptions invoking Dionysus to help the dead travel well. So yeah, he's not just the god of getting lost, he's the god of what happens next. The island on the horizon grows larger now, but strangely doesn't get closer. You watch it drift sideways like it's pacing. You think you see torches, or maybe fireflies, or maybe some trick of Dionysus's robe, which keeps shifting colors depending on the mood of the ship. The crew's arguments are now philosophical. One sailor insists that a wine jug is only a wine jug if it's full. Another argues that it's the emptiness inside that makes it useful. Dionysus applauds this and awards the winner a dried fig. No one's sure who won. And then, out of nowhere, a flock of birds swoops overhead. Purple-feathered, small-beaked, utterly silent. They scatter petals in their wake. The petals dissolve before hitting the deck. No one speaks for a moment. You look at the god, but he's dozing now, goblet cradled to his chest, curls spread like seaweed across the floorboards. A fine golden dust seems to gather around him. Or maybe he's just sweating sunlight. Hard to say. The ship drifts on, unbothered. And that's when you realize the sky has changed. Stars you don't recognize. A moon that's definitely too close and slightly green. You're not entirely sure you're still on Earth, or if you ever were. You close your eyes again, not out of fear but out of surrender. Dionysus laughs softly in his sleep. It sounds like wind through grape leaves. You wake again, if you were ever truly asleep, with your cheek pressed to a cushion that smells faintly of thyme and spilled wine. The sky above has gone from night black to a pale lavender wash, like the first brushstroke of dawn. Or maybe like someone accidentally diluted the divine ink. The ship is still moving, though you swear you felt no waves, no wind. Just motion without effort, like it's being pulled by an idea instead of the tide. You sit up slowly, stretch, and blink. The ship has changed. Not drastically, but noticeably. The sails now bear patterns that weren't there yesterday. Swirls of ivy and little gold-faced masks, like fragments of theater programs fluttering in an eternal breeze. Someone has hung bells from the rigging. They don't ring. Not from lack of wind, but from sheer attitude. These are the kind of bells that only chime for poetry. Dionysus is awake again, or at least he's standing. You never really see him rise, he just sort of is. Today he's wearing a crown of myrtle and a robe that drips with green so deep it might be envy dyed in velvet. He looks over the side of the ship and frowns at the sea like it owes him something. Then, turning to you, he asks, "Have you ever tried convincing a current to change direction?" Before laughing, loud and lazy. A sailor mutters something about dolphins again. You peer over the side. No dolphins. Just a great sweep of fog, curling around the hull like a sleepy cat. The island is gone. Or maybe you've passed it. Or maybe it was never there at all. Here's your solid historical fact for this chapter of disorientation. Ancient Greek ships, particularly merchant ones like this galley you're on, often followed strict seasonal sailing schedules. They avoided winter waters entirely, too dangerous, too temperamental, and honestly too cold to party on deck. But Dionysus doesn't follow shipping lanes. He drifts according to whims, moods, lunar eclipses, and, apparently, how many metaphors he can carry in his wine jug. The day continues in a hazy stretch of stories, toasts, naps, and the occasional interpretive dance by sailors who are either possessed or just very enthusiastic. Dionysus approves of both. No wrong moves, he says mid-sip. Just unexplored choreography. You start hearing music from below deck. No one goes below deck. That part of the ship hasn't existed until now, but the music is real-stringed, mournful, something plucked and yearning. It pulls at your ribs a little, like it's trying to tune you. Fringe tidbit time. There was a real cult of Dionysus in ancient Thrace that believed the god could split himself into multiple forms. Some joyful, others sorrowful, some terrifying. They'd reenact his emotional range in ceremonial performances, complete with masks that had shifting expressions depending on the angle. These weren't just fun props. They were considered mystical tools. You could tell how Dionysus was feeling by how the light hit his face. Scholars still argue whether these masks were meant to represent divine mood swings or just served as a clever way to perform in open-air theaters with unpredictable weather. Dionysus turns toward you suddenly, face bright. "We're stopping soon," he says. You squint. "Where?" He shrugs. "He's somewhere. Doesn't matter. It'll be there when we arrive." He's right, of course. The fog clears just enough to reveal a stretch of rocky shore, dotted with gnarled olive trees and crooked stone ruins, half swallowed by vines. It's not on any map you've seen, and probably not on any map that survived past the Bronze Age. The ship slides into a natural cove with all the effort of an exhale. You disembark onto warm, smooth stones. The crew follows, laughing and singing verses in languages you mostly understand, and a few you definitely don't. One man carries a tray of pomegranates. Another has a tambourine with coins sewn into the skin. Everyone seems to know what to do, except you, which is exactly how Dionysus likes it. He leads you inland, barefoot, robes trailing over thorns that seem to lean away from him. You try not to step on anything important, like mythological snakes or forgotten oaths, but it's hard to tell with this terrain. Eventually you arrive at what looks like an abandoned theater. Semicircular, carved into a hill, overgrown, but not dead. Moss cushions the stone seats. The stage is a marble slab split down the middle. Dionysus sighs happily. "Good bones," he says, sitting where the chorus would be. Suddenly, torches flare around the perimeter. No one lights them. They just flare. You're not surprised anymore. And then begins a play. No actors, no scripts, just movement and sound and shadow. It's a story about a lost god, a wandering soul, a cup of wine that tastes like memory. You're not sure if you're watching it, dreaming it, or starring in it. Dionysus watches too, occasionally mouthing lines that haven't been said yet. It ends with a boat drifting into the sky. You blink, and it's over. The torches go out. The theater is silent. Dionysus stands and brushes moss from his legs. "Wasn't that something?" he says. You don't answer. You're not sure how. As night drapes itself gently over the island, the crew begins lighting fires and preparing a meal. Lamb and lentils, bread spiced with coriander, dates soaked in wine. You eat beside the god, who hums tunelessly while carving figures into the dirt with a twig. Stars, ships, maybe that weird dolphin from earlier. You ask him if you're going to be here long. He raises a brow. "Here?" he echoes. "We've never been here. We're always there, just not yet." You give up on linear time. It clearly gave up on you first. The moon rises, normal this time, and the fire crackles, and the wind finally decides to show up, gentle and scented with rosemary. You lean back against a smooth boulder, stomach full, eyes heavy, limbs warm with starlight and wine. Somewhere nearby, someone is softly singing. You realize you're smiling. This isn't quite a vacation. It's more like a pause in reality, a chance to forget how the world is supposed to work, and for once, that feels perfect. The island is gone by morning. You wake to a flat, endless sea and a ship that smells like warm bread and oranges, though no one's baking and there's definitely no citrus on board. The sails now shimmer faintly, not with color exactly, but with suggestion. If you stare too long, they seem to show different things. Ivy, fire, a procession of masks. It's like they're auditioning meanings. Dionysus lounges at the prow, reclining like a cat in a sunbeam, only twice as smug. He's picked up a thyrsus again, a staff twined with ivy and tipped with a pine cone, because why settle for sensible weaponry when you can carry plant magic on a stick? He's twirling it absent-mindedly, then pausing now and then to sniff the sea breeze like it's wine in a tasting glass. You're not sure how long it's been since you left the mainland. Days? Hours? Time keeps slouching sideways. Your only real markers are the moods of the god beside you. And this morning, he seems thoughtful. Today, he says mid-thyrsus twirl, we seek direction. Then he laughs. Though it won't help. You ask what he means, but he just points. And there, suddenly, is a man standing on the water. Not in a metaphorical sense. Literally standing, barefoot, calm, robes the color of storm clouds. He's holding a lyre. He smiles at you a little sadly, like someone who knows where this is going and wishes it didn't have to. Dionysus waves at him with 2 fingers and mutters, Orpheus always shows up when things start to get weird. Historical fact? In older versions of the myth, Orpheus doesn't just charm animals and trees. He also sails with Jason and the Argonauts, where he literally sings down sea monsters and calms murderous sirens. Think of him as the team's emotional support bard, except instead of providing backup vocals, he outshines everyone and sometimes makes them cry. Anyway, Orpheus plays a note, just one. The sky darkens, not dramatically, more like a stage light dimming, and the sea responds. Waves rise, then hush. You can feel every living thing within a mile go silent. The ship slows. No wind, no sail tension. Just stillness. Then a song. No lyrics. No tune you could hum. Just feeling. It pours from Orpheus's lyre like warm grief, half beautiful, half unbearable. You remember things you didn't know you'd forgotten. Your mother's hands, the smell of wet stone. A goodbye you never got to say. Dionysus is smiling again, but differently this time. Quieter. Like this hurts, but in a good way. A sailor kneels. Another weeps openly. Someone pours out their wine without meaning to. Then Orpheus nods once and vanishes. Just gone. No splash. No parting of waves. The music lingers a few seconds longer before dissolving into wind. You take a shaky breath. That, Dionysus says, is why I don't invite him to parties. The wind returns in full force. Brisk, salt-heavy, smelling now of crushed herbs and old parchment. The ship jolts forward. You stumble a bit and catch yourself against a barrel that wasn't there before. It's labeled Forgotten Truths in sloppy painted letters. Probably just decorative. Probably. That breeze carries something else, too. A low drumming, like footsteps or a heartbeat. Then you see them. Birds. A whole flock of seabirds, except they're not flying. They're walking on the water, perfectly synchronized, stepping toward the ship like a feathered chorus line. One wears a crown. Another drags a tiny cart filled with grapes. One seems to be taking notes. You ask Dionysus if this is normal. Define normal, he replies, sipping from a shell now, not a cup. Some cultures believe birds carry the souls of the lost. Others think they're messengers. These, he adds, are probably just nosy. You watch the birds strut around the hole for a while before they vanish too, just like Orpheus. One leaves behind a single feather on the deck. It glows faintly, but only when you're not looking directly at it. Fringe myth note, there's a lesser-known story where Dionysus once tried to teach a pelican how to dance. It didn't go well. The pelican refused, attacked the wine supply, and then flew off with a sacred scroll. Historians still argue whether this was an allegory about human arrogance or just a very drunk poet trying to invent pelican-themed metaphysics. By midday, the sea turns to glass. No waves, no movement. The ship doesn't stop, but it doesn't ripple the surface either. It's like floating through a mirror. You start to feel the weight of it all. Not fear exactly, but anticipation. Like the ship is headed towards something sacred, something old enough that names won't stick to it. The sailors grow quiet. Even the god seems to shrink inward, Thyrsis now resting still in his lap. And then, as if summoned by silence, land appears. A single, perfect island. No cliffs or crags, just soft hills, a gentle bay, and something gleaming at the center, a stone circle etched with gold. It looks like it belongs to time itself. Dionysus stands. This, he says, brushing imaginary dust from his robe, is where the wine thinks. You raise an eyebrow. The wine thinks? He grins. Oh yes, not thinks like mortals do. More like remembers, dreams, whispers secrets into the barrels. You disembark again, walking this time on stepping stones that rise from the sea just for you. The sand on the beach isn't sand, it's finely crushed shells, and it squeaks softly beneath your feet like polite applause. At the stone circle, Dionysus kneels. Not out of reverence, but to sniff something at the base of a pillar. He stands again and declares, "Vintage year, impossibly old. Excellent undertones of rebellion and lost love. Aged in the oak of sorrow." You're pretty sure he's joking. But then again, probably not. You circle the stones. Each one is carved with names, not in Greek, but in something older. The kind of letters that don't sound out words, but feelings. You touch one. It's warm. A word forms in your mind. Yearning. Not a bad vintage, Dionysus murmurs. As twilight falls again, the god beckons you back to the ship. You hesitate just for a moment. The island hums beneath your feet like a cello string. You wonder what it would mean to stay. But you don't. Not yet. Back on the deck, a new cup of wine waits for you. You drink. It tastes like a story still being written. The ship is moving again. Not that it ever really stopped, but now the pace is different. More deliberate. Like it knows where it's going, but would rather not arrive too quickly. Dionysus sits cross-legged near the tiller, humming a wordless tune into the wind. Every now and then, he flicks his fingers, and the sails twitch like startled birds. The stars come early tonight, or maybe time has just folded again. They spill across the sky in impossible constellations. A goat doing taxes, a woman dancing inside a cup, a snake devouring its own name. You try to identify them like you used to as a kid, lying on your roof with a blanket and a snack, but the stars refuse to play by your old rules. Welcome to the sea of unrehearsed endings, Dionysus murmurs like it's a weather report. It's where things start forgetting they had a destination. You frown. That sounds dangerous. He shrugs. Only if you try to get somewhere. Now the horizon tilts, just a little. Not enough to panic, but enough to make you grab the railing. The sea tilts too. And then, like someone flipping a switch, you're not sailing on water anymore. You're sailing through it. Above you, fish. Whole schools of them, drifting across what used to be sky. Their scales reflect stars, and one of them looks exactly like your high school math teacher. He mouths something at you, probably an equation. Dionysus tosses a handful of olives upward. They arc gracefully, then vanish into the liquid sky with no splash at all. I like this part, he says. No gravity, no guilt. You watch as a jellyfish floats past, pulsing with a light that hums like elevator music. There's a turtle with a monocle. A dolphin reading a scroll. One squid tips an imaginary hat at you before drifting off into a cloud of bioluminescent plankton. This is officially weird. Historically, Dionysus isn't just the god of wine and parties. He's also the patron of madness, theater, and transformation. Some scholars think this made him terrifying, more chaos than comfort. Others say he's the ultimate liberator, freeing mortals from rules, routines, and the crushing weight of should. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was ever truly welcome in Olympus, or whether the other gods merely tolerated him like a loud cousin who brings fireworks to a funeral. Back on the boat, Dionysus suddenly stands and announces, "We need music!" You wait, expecting him to summon Orpheus again. But no. He just claps twice, and from below deck, a trio of satyrs burst onto the scene. You didn't even know there was a below deck. They're not what you'd call professional musicians. One's got a lyre missing half its strings. Another's trying to play 2 flutes at once and kind of succeeding. The third just bangs a tambourine rhythmically against his own forehead. It shouldn't work, but somehow, it does. The music floats across the not water, echoing weirdly against the upside-down sky. It starts slow, an offbeat lullaby for no one in particular. Then it shifts, playful and strange, like the soundtrack to a dream where you're late for class but also riding a camel made of glass. You sway without meaning to. The wine in your cup sparkles in time with the beat. Dionysus starts dancing, not in a showy way, but with a lazy grace that makes you think of willows swaying or cats circling sunbeams. The satyrs follow, clumsy and joyous, knocking over barrels and laughing about it. You're caught in it too. Your feet move without asking. Your body forgets it has joints and starts moving like syrup. And then the ship spins. Not a sharp turn. A long, slow pirouette. The sky flips back into ocean, and you realize you're headed straight toward nothing. A vast blank space. No stars, no sea, no sound. It's just absence. A kind of cosmic shrug. "Don't panic," Dionysus says, though his eyes sparkle with mischief. This is the part where the map gives up. You stare ahead. The ship drifts toward the void. The music fades, then disappears entirely. Even the wind stops. The god raises his thyrsa. From its tip, a single vine grows, fast and deliberate. It coils upward, then out, forming a green bridge that leads directly into the nothingness. "Walk with me," he says. You hesitate. You really don't want to, but you also don't not want to, so you follow. Each step echoes like you're walking inside a bell. The vine beneath your feet is soft but strong, like trampoline moss. Around you, silence. Total ringing silence. Then a whisper. At first you think it's your imagination, but it repeats. Louder. "Do you remember your first lie?" You stop cold. It's not Dionysus speaking. He's still walking ahead, calm as ever. The voice came from below, or inside, you can't tell. Another whisper. "What would you do if no one watched?" You pick up the pace. Eventually the vine bridge leads to a doorway. Just freestanding, out in the nothing, like someone plopped an entrance in the middle of a deleted scene. The door is made of red glass. It reflects not your current face, but your childhood one. You look grumpy. You're holding a popsicle. The popsicle is melting directly onto your shirt. Dionysus pushes the door open without knocking. "This next bit is very boring," he says. "You might even fall asleep." You step through, and instantly, everything goes gray. You're in a waiting room, like an actual waiting room. Plastic chairs, a chipped coffee table covered in scrolls, a vine-covered vending machine humming softly in the corner. There's a receptionist, a woman with snakes for hair, wearing bifocals and a Live, Laugh, Love sweatshirt. She looks up and nods. "Name?" You say. "Doesn't matter," she replies, ticking something off a list. "You're here for the scheduled disorientation." Dionysus winks at her. "Good to see you, Eunomia." "Back again?" she sighs. "You lose another crew?" "Not yet." You take a seat. The scrolls on the table unroll themselves. One shows a map of your dreams from the past year. Another is titled Emotional Luggage, a Checklist. One just says, in huge block letters, "Why?" You close your eyes. It smells like old grapes and fresh paper. Somewhere, a harp starts playing, and without quite meaning to, you drift. You wake with a start, or at least you think you do. It's hard to tell where sleep ends and Dionysus begins. The waiting room is gone. So is the vine bridge. You're back on the boat, though it might be a different boat now. The sails are darker. The wood smells faintly of cinnamon and regret. Dionysus leans over the railing, tossing wine-soaked breadcrumbs into the sea. "Were you dreaming?" he asks. You rub your eyes. "I think so." He smiles like someone who knows the punchline, but won't say it aloud. "Good. That means the wine's working." You glance down at your cup. It's full again. Of course it is. Across the deck, the satyrs have collapsed into an undignified snoring pile. One has a banana peel on his head. Another is cuddling a cask like it's a childhood blanket. The third is writing something in his sleep with a quill made from his own tail. Dionysus gestures toward the horizon, where a faint outline of land shimmers like heat on asphalt. "There," he says. "That's where we're going." You squint. "Is that real?" He shrugs. "Realish. It's a place the ancients used to visit in their sleep, before alarm clocks ruined everything." The ship adjusts course, sails flaring open like a yawn. You hear the creak of wood and the soft plunk of something falling overboard. Probably someone's dignity. "Is this what the Greek myths were really like?" you ask. He laughs. Number they were even weirder. And he's not wrong. A lot of what we know about Dionysus comes from a patchwork of sources. Plays, hymns, fragments of vases. He's one of the few gods who was born twice, lived as both mortal and divine, and spent a decent portion of his time wandering around in drag or turning people into dolphins. Historians still argue whether he represents liberation or instability, or whether those two are secretly the same thing. As the land grows closer, details begin to emerge. Hills covered in vines, temples carved into cliffs, a village with buildings made entirely from amphorae stacked like Jenga towers. The smell of crushed grapes drifts on the wind. "We're approaching Nysa," Dionysus says, "but don't bother looking for it on a map. Cartographers gave up centuries ago." You disembark. The dock is made of driftwood and cork. Your feet squish slightly with each step. A small creature, half goat, half apron, offers you a fig and scurries away before you can say thanks. Dionysus stretches like he's been sleeping for a century. "We'll need supplies, a guide, possibly a talking goose. You know, the usual." You nod, though you're not sure what the usual is anymore. The village is quiet, but not empty. People move slowly here, as if time costs extra. A woman waters a tree that waters her back. A boy plays marbles with pebbles that float 3 inches off the ground. Someone's yelling about taxes, but it's unclear whether they're for or against them. A statue in the square depicts Dionysus lounging dramatically on a pile of grapes. A local has drawn a mustache on it. Dionysus is delighted. As you explore, you start to feel sideways. Like your brain is processing everything half a second too late. A man hands you a scroll with the word "yes" written over and over. You say thank you. He weeps with joy and walks into a wall. "Things are a bit loose around the edges here," Dionysus explains, "but don't worry. It's safe." "Probably." You sit beneath a fig tree while the god negotiates with a donkey about rental prices. The donkey wears a monocle and insists on payment in riddles. A compromise is eventually reached involving 3 buttons and a sneeze. This is how you acquire your guide. She's a nymph named Clia, with eyes like morning mist and a laugh that smells faintly of peaches. She doesn't speak, but communicates through interpretive dance and eyebrow wiggles. You like her immediately. Your party sets off into the hills. The path winds through olive groves and pastures of imaginary livestock. Cows with accordion necks, chickens that quote ancient philosophy, a sheep playing solitaire with itself. You ask Dionysus if this is all magic. Nope, he replies. Just forgotten. And it's true. Mythical places often fade, not because they're destroyed, but because people stop believing in the in-between. In this case, Nysa was once thought to be where Dionysus was raised, hidden from Hera's wrath by nymphs who fed him honey and let him skip bedtime. Some versions put it in Libya, others in India. Still others say it's just a metaphor for childhood. Historians still argue whether the myth points to a real location or just an emotional one. The hills open into a valley where grapevines twist into elaborate knots that spell out riddles when seen from above. You see one that reads, "If you kiss a mirror, who's kissing you back?" You don't answer. You're pretty sure it's a trap. Cleia leads you to a cave entrance draped in flowering vines. Dionysus frowns. "I forgot about this part," he mutters. "What is it?" you ask. "The maze of personal reflection." You groan. "Do I have to?" "Oh, absolutely," he grins. "It's tradition." Inside, the air changes. Cool. Still. Smells like petrichor and unfinished to-do list. The walls are mirrored, but not all the time. Sometimes they show your reflection. Sometimes they show your past. Occasionally they just show pancakes. No one knows why. You see yourself as a child, then as someone who almost went to art school, then as someone who bought a treadmill and used it twice. You see moments you forgot. Regrets you thought you buried. Dreams you didn't chase because someone laughed. Clea glides beside you, offering no judgment. Just a quiet presence. Eventually, you reach the center. A pool of still wine. Dionysus is already there, sitting cross-legged and staring into the surface. "You can ask it one question," he says. You kneel beside him. The wine reflects not your face, but a dozen versions of it. Happy, angry, confused, brave, bored. You whisper, "What am I really looking for?" The pool ripples, and the answer comes, not in words, but in a feeling. Like standing at the edge of something vast and beautiful and just a little dangerous. You sit with that for a moment. Then Dionysus claps his hands and says, "Snack time." You exit the maze to find a full picnic spread waiting. Dates, figs, honey cakes, cheese that hums softly to itself. The satyrs are back, chasing each other with pickles. Clea offers you a goblet shaped like a tulip. You drink. The wine tastes like second chances. You lounge under a sky that seems to blush the longer you stare at it. The air here is so light, you wonder if breathing it is slowly making you forget things. Like deadlines, awkward small talk, and that time you accidentally replied all. Dionysus reclines beside you on a woven mat of grape leaves, flicking grapes at a lazy breeze. Each grape vanishes midair with a satisfied pop, like reality is gently swallowing its own snack. "Rest it?" he asks. "Rest-ish," you reply. He grins. "Good enough." The boat is waiting at a pond that somehow opens onto the sea. Clea performs an exaggerated mime of rowing, then spins dramatically and bows. Translation: We're traveling again. The satyrs return from wherever satyrs disappear to. Probably a mushroom rave. One of them is wearing a crown made of stale bread. Another rides in on the back of a pig. No one questions it. The boat sets off, gliding without oars. The sea is unnaturally calm, like a giant blue plate held very still by something that doesn't quite care about physics anymore. You're not sure where you're going, but that's never mattered less. Now, Dionysus says, "It's time for a detour." You groan. "Aren't we already on a detour?" He raises an eyebrow. "We're inside a detour's daydream. Different rules." The boat glides toward an island shaped suspiciously like a reclining cat. It purrs softly as you approach. A wave waves at you. This place shouldn't exist, and yet you're already wondering if you could move here. The island is called Ritium, which you mishear as Riot Yum, and honestly, both seem fitting. Here, every tree grows something different. Wine bottles, cheese wheels, sandals, mildly judgmental tomatoes. A woman sits knitting thunderclouds into a scarf. Are we dreaming? You ask Dionysus. No. This is just one of the places that didn't make the cut in Homer's final draft. That might be a joke, but you can't tell anymore. As you wander, the locals, if you can call beings made of mist and old jokes locals, welcome you with a procession. It's not clear if it's for you or for a dog named Socrates who just passed his philosophy exam. Either way, you're handed a ceremonial grape. One of the mist beings approaches and whispers, "Do you remember when you were 4 and thought you could dig a hole to the underworld?" You blink. How do you know that? The being smiles. You left a note. That's not comforting. You sit beneath a tree that drops warm memories instead of fruit. One lands in your lap, a birthday you'd forgotten, the sound of a friend's laughter you haven't heard in years. Another memory brushes your shoulder like static, something you haven't lived yet. You file that under deeply suspicious and pretend it didn't happen. Nearby, Dionysus chats with a pair of satyrs who have fused together into a 2-headed lounge chair. One head is telling jokes, the other is crying at them. Balance! Dionysus nods. A brief debate erupts among the locals about whether rhedium is a myth or an embarrassment. Historians still argue whether it was an actual Dionysian retreat or just a particularly chaotic footnote in an ancient playwright's fever dream. Some suggest it was used by wandering cults for their more theatrical rites. Processions, mask rituals, even wine-fueled improv. Fringe researchers think the island might be an allegory for creative burnout. You don't say it out loud, but rhedium feels like a metaphor for your brain at 2 a.m. Clea dances her way to your side, twirls, then points toward a stone amphitheater, tucked behind some disapproving fig bushes. It's empty, but the air buzzes like it's full of applause that forgot to leave. Is there a show? You ask. Dionysus beams. There's always a show. He claps twice. The stage lights flicker on. There's no sun, yet there's spotlight. Curtains rise. No actors appear. Instead, the shadows on the walls begin to perform. You watch as your own silhouette stumbles out. It trips over its own feet, waves awkwardly, and begins reenacting your worst high school memory. The satyrs cheer. You bury your face in your hands. A second shadow joins the first. It's Dionysus, or at least a shadow Dionysus, exaggerated in dancing, his vine crown at a rakish tilt. The two shadows dance, argue, make up. Shadow. You climbs a metaphorical mountain, then falls off it into a puddle labeled humility. You watch it all with a mixture of horror and acceptance. Dionysus leans close. Don't worry, no one else sees what you see. You glance around. Everyone's mesmerized. One satyr is crying into a watermelon. Another is clapping in slow motion. When the performance ends, the shadows bow. The crowd roars, well, hums appreciatively. You find yourself clapping too. Somehow it helped. Later, you stroll along the beach with Clea, your footprints filling with lavender instead of water. She points out a constellation in the shape of a spilled cup and sighs. That one? Dionysus says, appearing with a goblet that seems suspiciously self-replenishing. That's mine. The Cup of Confusion. Named it after myself, obviously. You ask, why are we stopping here? Why not keep going? He frowns. You can't rush a myth. Every stop has a reason, even the ones that feel pointless. You stare at the water. It ripples in the shape of a question mark, then promptly erases itself. A satyr hands you a scroll with a recipe for something called existential baklava. You try not to ask questions. As the night deepens, the island starts fading, not vanishing, just retreating like a shy thought. Rhedium isn't meant to last. It's a liminal place. A soft pause. You and the crew board the boat. As you pull away, the island cat gives a lazy yawn and sinks into the sea with a hiss. The stars rearrange themselves into an arrow. Where to now, you ask? Dionysus sips from his cup. Now we go looking for the chorus. You frown. A literal chorus? Oh yes, the kind that appears when things go sideways. You try to protest, but a yawn escapes first. Your head droops against the ship's warm railing. The satyrs hum a tune that doesn't have lyrics, just feelings. Clio watches the stars. Dionysus hums along in a key you're pretty sure doesn't exist. You fall asleep to the sound of waves arguing with the moon. You wake up slowly, the kind of slow that feels like unspooling a long thread from a dream you didn't quite leave behind. There's sand in your shoes, which is weird, because you went to bed on a boat. The sky is the same pale lavender as oversteeped tea, and the sea smells faintly of cinnamon and maybe regret. Dionysus is already awake, of course, lounging in the boat's stern, sipping something that glows faintly green. You ever wonder if reality just gives up sometimes? He asks without looking at you. You nod. Or maybe you just think about nodding. It's hard to tell. Clio appears beside you with a slightly mischievous smile. We're going inland today, she says, for answers. Or at least more questions disguised as answers. The boat kisses the shore of a small peninsula shaped like a lyre, its strings made of golden sandbars. As you disembark, the reeds along the bank begin to hum. Literally hum, like they're warming up their vocal cords. Is this the chorus? You ask. Dionysus throws an arm around your shoulder. Not quite. This is rehearsal. You're led along a winding footpath that seems to retie itself after every step. The terrain shifts, olive groves melt into meadows full of floating masks. It feels like stepping through moods, not geography. At one point, you walk through a breeze that smells exactly like the inside of your grandmother's closet. You never told anyone what that smelled like. Eventually, you reach a half-ruined amphitheater carved into the hillside. There's no roof, no stage, but dozens of empty seats carved into the stone. And sitting in those seats are not people. Not quite. Some are made of sound. Throats humming, whispering, shouting with no visible faces. Others are silhouettes that flicker like broken candles. One looks like your 6th grade math teacher wearing a lion mask. That's disconcerting. The chorus doesn't speak at first. They just observe in that full-body way that makes you feel like your dreams are being cataloged. Dionysus stands in the center of the empty theater and clears his throat. Dear chorus, he says, arms wide, we are completely and utterly lost. Please proceed with the drama. One of the shadows replies with a voice like echoing thunder. Have you tried turning left instead of right? A second voice, high and nasal, chimes in. Or maybe don't turn at all. Stay in place until meaning shows up. A third voice hums the Greek alphabet backwards. You sit on a mossy step and try to process what's happening. This might be the mythological version of asking for directions at a gas station in a dream. You're handed a scroll. It unrolls itself mid-air, covered in a looping script that translates itself slowly. To find where you're going, let the drama unfold. To find who you are, forget who you were told. Seek the vineyard of mirrors. Seek the past that bends. To reach the next act, let go of the end. You blink. The scroll disappears into confetti. Clio whispers, it's not about solving. It's about noticing. Historians still argue whether the chorus in Dionysian myths was meant to offer divine wisdom or just sarcastic commentary from the peanut gallery. In older rites, the chorus may have represented the collective unconscious, the fears and desires of the audience reflected back at them. Some fringe theories claim the chorus was once a real entity, summoned through ritual wine vapors and synchronized poetry. You're starting to believe all of it. The chorus begins to sing now, not in words, but in impressions. The song tastes like the color blue. It feels like memories you don't own. At one point, your ears fill with the sound of wind rustling a parchment that doesn't exist. And then silence. You look around, the chorus is gone. Only a faint breeze remains, rustling the olive trees. The amphitheater is suddenly full of satyrs again, as if they were the chorus all along and you just missed it. Dionysus pats your shoulder. You did well. I did what? You listened. The group begins walking uphill, past the edge of the amphitheater. The trail curves through hills littered with abandoned masks. Tragedy, comedy, mystery, bureaucracy. You pick one up and it sighs dramatically. You put it back down. At the summit of the hill is a single pomegranate tree. It hums softly. This, Dionysus says, is the entrance. To what? Your next poor decision. You tilt your head. And we're choosing this? Oh, definitely, he replies. It's tradition. He plucks a pomegranate from the tree and hands it to you. The moment you touch it, the world hiccups. The ground does a slow spin. Gravity negotiates a new contract. Clea tugs your sleeve. Remember, she says, not all doors look like doors. The fruit opens itself, not in halves, but like a curtain. Light spills out. It's not the blinding kind, it's soft and gold and shaped like voices. You step into the pomegranate. Yes, you step into it. Inside is a hallway lined with broken vases, each one painted with a scene from a life that might have been yours. There you are, shepherding goats. There you are, painting sea monsters. There you are, marrying a mop. Long story. At the end of the hall is a door made of vines and laughter. You open it without using your hands. You're standing now in a vineyard under a crescent moon. The grapes are glassy and reflect things that aren't there. Childhood friends, unfinished poems, pets you still dream about. The vineyard stretches into infinity, but a path appears beneath your feet, made of soft moss and sleep dust. Where are we now, you ask? Dionysus grins. Almost there, but first, one last distraction. You sigh. Of course. The vineyard begins to flicker as though it's turning into something else. The grapes become eyeballs for a moment, then mirrors, then just grapes again. You try not to overthink it. As you walk, the stars form a shape in the sky. A boat, just like yours. Except, it's upside down. The message is clear. Things are about to get weird. You stand at the edge of the vineyard, the moonlight filtering through grapevines like spilled milk over silk. The air here is too still, too expectant, as though the night itself has taken a deep breath and is holding it. Dionysus, bless him or blame him, is already halfway down a new path, whistling a tune that feels suspiciously like the Jeopardy theme in Lydian mode. The rest of the wine boat crew has stopped talking. Even the satyrs seem subdued. One of them has perched on a wine barrel and is silently playing a flute made of what might be a femur. You don't ask. The path ahead is made of cobblestones that shimmer slightly, not with magic, but the way things look when you're halfway between waking and dreaming. It leads to a town, tucked in a bowl of hills, the rooftops so close together they might be gossiping. As you walk, Clea explains in a near whisper. This is Thyrassos, she says. The town that forgets. Everything. Constantly. Everything? You ask. Well, not gravity, she replies. Or soup, but almost everything else? Yeah, you pass through a crooked wooden archway into the main square. No signs, no names. Just people milling about with the calm, dazed look of folks who are certain they had a purpose 5 minutes ago, but now find themselves holding a fish and a spool of thread for no apparent reason. One man wanders past you wearing one shoe and muttering, I know I was a blacksmith. Or a cloud. A woman nearby stirs a pot filled with daisies and says, Dinner's ready unless this is laundry. You glance at Dionysus. He shrugs. They had a run-in with one of my more experimental vintages a few centuries ago. Ever since, memory's optional. Historians still argue whether towns like this actually existed, Places so steeped in myth and sacred wine that linear time became politely optional. Some think Thrasos was a cautionary tale, a kind of moral finger wag about indulgence. Others suspect it was real, a community of devotees who chose to live forever in the present. No past to weigh them down. Clya leans close. This is where we're supposed to ask directions again. To what? The Vineyard of Mirrors? No, she says. That was last section. Now we're looking for the Oracle of Lost Things. Of course you are. You're guided through the winding alleys by a small goat who seems to know the way. At one point, you pass a wall made entirely of sandals. A child offers you a handful of melted spoons in case you need them for the silence. Finally, you reach a house shaped like a question mark. Literally. The roof loops around into a curly spiral, and the windows blink open and shut like tired eyes. Inside, the Oracle sits cross-legged on a pile of forgotten books. She wears a tunic made of mismatched socks, and her hair is full of tiny bells that only ring when you try to ignore them. She's somewhere between 14 and 400 years old. You seek direction, she says before you speak. That's unfortunate. Dionysus bows dramatically. We're trying to get unlost, dear Oracle. Been zigzagging all over the Aegean with no clear plot. The Oracle smiles. But isn't that the plot? You sit on a beanbag chair made of laurels and sigh. Can you help or not? Define help, she replies, sipping from a goblet that smells like curiosity and nutmeg. A curtain rustles and a second oracle emerges, identical to the first but somehow angrier and slightly more into interpretive dance. The road you want does not exist until it is walked, she says, stretching her arms skyward. The first oracle nods, and the destination is already behind you. Clya mutters, "Classic." The second oracle continues, "To find your path, you must unburden. Leave behind what you don't remember choosing to carry." The satyrs dump a sack of silver goblets on the floor. "No," she says. "Not that kind of baggage." You look down. You're clutching something. You didn't notice it before. A small stone tablet with your name scratched into it, in someone else's handwriting. You hand it to the oracle. "Better," she says, and with a flick of her finger, it vanishes in a puff of jasmine smoke. A door opens behind you. There wasn't a door before. "This way," says Clya. "And don't look back." Of course you do. And the town of Thrasos is gone. Replaced by a mirror. Not just a mirror, the mirror. It's not reflecting you as you are, but as you could have been, had you said yes to that one thing, or no to that other thing, or taken that left turn in 2016. You don't step through it. You step beside it. The ground beneath your feet becomes cracked marble, strewn with the remnants of feasts long gone, grape skins, olive pits, the occasional lyre string. The air smells like endings and encore requests. Ahead a temple rises, built of old theater masks, empty wine bottles, and applause. This is not a temple to a god. It's a temple to the moment. And Dionysus smiles at it like a proud parent watching a child graduate clown college. Inside the temple, time does a little loop-de-loop. You walk in with shoes and exit barefoot. The floor is covered in scrolls, each one a version of this journey written slightly differently. One features you as a fish. Another ends with everyone becoming bees. You step carefully past these drafts and find the final scroll. It's blank. "That's yours," Clya says. "To write?" "To dream." There's a table set for a feast. No food, just anticipation. Each plate holds a single grape and a tiny mirror. You eat both. They taste like secrets you're finally ready to hear. And then the curtain falls. Not metaphorically. A literal red velvet curtain descends from the sky, brushing your forehead gently as it settles. The lights dim, the stage clears, even the stars look like they're applauding. You emerge from the temple into silence so complete it feels like a sound in itself, a kind of hush that coats your skin. The moon is impossibly full now, low and enormous on the horizon, like it's eavesdropping. You half expect it to wink. Dionysus stretches like a cat. Well, that was emotionally exhausting. Anyone else need a snack, a nap, therapy? You don't respond. You're still thinking about the oracle's words, about the mirror, about the scroll you didn't write on? Or maybe you did, and it just doesn't show up in this lighting. Ahead, the ground levels into an olive grove. The trees are crooked and dignified, their silver-green leaves rustling in a wind that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. Hanging from the branches aren't olives, but tiny amphorae, no taller than your thumb, swaying gently like wind chimes. Each amphora contains a story. You don't need anyone to tell you that. You can hear them clinking softly against one another. Soundtracks of whispered arguments, laughter, lullabies, epic poems, and exactly one confused donkey bray. Dionysus walks ahead, brushing his fingers along the branches as he passes. These are the ones that were never told, or were told and forgotten, or told only once in the wrong language at the wrong time and left behind. You pluck one amphora from a low-hanging branch. It glows briefly in your palm, and a voice says, "She opened the letter but never read it." Then it falls silent again. There's something heartbreakingly honest about that. A satyr tries to climb one of the trees and is promptly smacked in the face by a branch that seems unusually sentient. He mutters something unprintable and wanders off, holding his nose and humming angrily. Clio catches up to you. "These trees aren't native," she says. "They only grow where enough stories have been almost forgotten." You squint at her. "That feels like a metaphor." "It is," she nods. "A deeply inconvenient one." Somewhere a lyre begins to play itself. A harp answers from the distance. And you realize the grove is circular, not just in shape, but in function. You've been here before. Not in this dream, maybe, but in another life. Or another book. Or maybe a night like this one, where everything smelled like rosemary and regret. Historians still argue whether the olive grove of lost stories was meant as a punishment or a gift. Some claim it was Dionysus's way of preserving what others discarded. Others believe it was a trap because stories that go unread still echo, and echoes can haunt. The god himself sits cross-legged at the grove's center, lighting a tiny fire with what looks like flint and sarcasm. "Gather round," he says. And somehow, despite your rational instinct screaming that this is absolutely how cults start, you do. Everyone does. The satyrs, Clio, the goat who may or may not be your uncle. Even the moon seems to scoot in a bit closer just to listen. Dionysus clears his throat, and in that moment, the fire changes color. Burning violet with flickers of chartreuse, like someone set fire to Mardi Gras. He speaks. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just easily. Like he's telling a bedtime story he half remembers from a dream. "There was a time," he says, "when wine didn't exist." Gasps from the satyrs. A dramatic swoon. One of them throws his goblet in shock and instantly regrets it. "Yes," Dionysus continues, "there was only water and honey in the ache of potential." He spins a tale, not of how he invented wine, but how he discovered it. By accident, by curiosity, by watching grapes rot and wondering if maybe rot was just a misunderstood form of transformation. And it worked. The juice fermented, the people drank, and everything changed. "But," he says, holding up a grape like it's the original sin, "with every invention comes a decision. Is this for joy or escape?" You don't realize you've been holding your breath until you exhale a little too loudly. Clio pats your shoulder. Dionysus tosses the grape into the fire. It pops. "There was a man," he says, shifting into a new story, "who sailed with me once. His name was Alekos, fisherman. Terrible at cards. thought he could outdrink a cyclops. The satyrs snicker. He thought wine would make him brave. Instead, it made him honest. And once he got honest, he realized he'd been in the wrong life for 30 years. So he jumped off the boat and swam home, took up sculpture, got married, never drank again. And you know what? We wait. He was happy. The fire crackles. No moral, Dionysus says. Just that. And then he reaches into the fire and pulls out a scroll, unburnt, unmarked. This one's for you, he says, tossing it your way. You catch it without thinking. You'll know when to read it. And with that, he lies back on the grass and begins snoring like a content bear in a hammock. The satyrs follow suit, some curling into balls, others draped over tree roots like half-finished ideas. Clea yawns. We're close now. You lie back, scroll cradled against your chest, staring up at the stars. They're spelling something out in constellations. Possibly your name, possibly a recipe for fig jam. The wind hushes the trees. The amphorae stop clinking. And slowly, almost invisibly, the olive grove exhales. You wake up to warmth. Soft, golden, syrupy sunlight filtering through leaves that weren't golden last night. The trees of the olive grove have changed overnight, somehow shedding their silvery sheen for burnished autumn tones. It's morning, or maybe the idea of morning. Time's gotten loose again, like a belt after a long feast. The satyrs are still asleep, tangled in limbs and dreams. Dionysus snores under a fig tree, his head pillowed on a wineskin. A bee hovers above his nose and wisely changes course. Clea is already up, crouched by a stream that has appeared as if summoned by collective thirst. She's washing her face and humming something hauntingly familiar. Maybe a lullaby from your grandmother, or maybe a song you invented last week and forgot. Either way, it wraps around your ears like comfort. The scroll Dionysus gave you is still there, untouched, bound with a thin ribbon of vine that curls and pulses faintly with life. You're still not supposed to open it, obviously. Clea beckons. Come on, she says. Today's the day we actually get lost. You raise an eyebrow. I thought we already were. No, she grins. So far, we've only been wandering. Today, we lose ourselves properly. That doesn't feel reassuring. But you follow anyway. The grove opens into a narrow path lined with pomegranate trees, each fruit split open and gleaming like treasure chests full of rubies. The air smells tart and electric. Every few steps you swear you hear voices whispering things like, left is safer, or don't trust the goat with the monocle. You wisely ignore them. Eventually the path twists into what can only be described as a hedge maze designed by a drunk philosopher. The walls are tall and flowering, they smell like citrus and old scrolls. Every few paces the path forks, and there's never any signage, just the occasional cryptic carving. A lyre, a ship, an open eye, a closed door. Dionysus catches up with you, yawning loudly. Ah, my favorite bit. The maze of misinterpretation. No map, no logic, no minotaur, but we do have a moderately aggressive pigeon. He points upward. A single pigeon watches you with what can only be described as disdainful omniscience. It fluffs its feathers like it's about to grade your choices. You step forward and pick a path at random. Clea doesn't follow. She goes a different way entirely. So we're splitting up, you ask over your shoulder. We always were, she calls back. It just wasn't official yet. Dionysus claps. Oh good. Separation anxiety builds character. The hedge maze isn't threatening, it's confusing. Not in the where am I sense, but more like, wasn't this question rhetorical 2 turns ago? You pass by scenes frozen in ivy-covered alcoves. A merchant arguing with a mirror, a young girl writing letters to herself, a pair of sandals with wings trying to fly out of a birdcage. Each scene hums faintly, like memories trying to become dreams again. At one crossroads, a woman in a green cloak offers you a cup of tea. You'll forget everything you don't need, she says, but you'll also forget something you love. You politely decline. She smiles as if that was the right answer, or maybe the wrong one made confidently. Eventually, you stop choosing paths and just start walking, trusting the ground to know where it's going. That's when the hedges part into a wide clearing paved in polished stone, inlaid with tiny mosaic dolphins. This apparently is where the wine boat waited. The boat itself is impossible. Long and narrow, carved from olive wood, and decorated with mother-of-pearl vines that curl and shimmer. It's docked in a reflecting pool too shallow for movement. Yet the boat sways gently like it knows it's going somewhere soon. Clia's already on board, her feet dangling over the edge, trailing in water that probably doesn't obey the laws of fluid dynamics. Dionysus boards last, dragging behind him a net full of empty goblets and one particularly grumpy eel. "Don't ask," he says. The moment your foot touches the deck, something changes. The trees blur. The maze behind you folds in on itself like an origami contradiction. The pool deepens without rippling. The boat shudders, then glides forward. No sails. No oars. No need. It just moves. You pass under archways formed by trees that bow respectfully. Past waterfalls that flow upward. Pass, at one point, what looks suspiciously like a corporate conference room, submerged in vines. Clia leans over. "Don't worry, that one's not canon." The river widens. Stars return, even though it's still daylight. The sky takes on a color you can't name, somewhere between vintage lavender and unfinished metaphor. Historians still argue whether this river was metaphor, memory, or an actual tributary off the coast of myth. Some say it leads to Lethe, the river of forgetting. Others say it's just Dionysus' version of Uberpool. The god is humming again, strumming a lute that sounds like it's been drinking. You're drifting now, lulled by rhythm and wine-scented breezes. The boat carries you not through space, but through story. A mountain looms ahead, sharp and ice-capped, the kind that shows up only in cautionary tales. But as the boat approaches, the peak splits open into a cavernous smile. Inside, vineyards. Thousands of them climbing the inner walls like ivy, impossibly ripe and glistening with dew. "We're here," says Dionysus, hopping off and tying the boat to a loop of air. "Where's here?" He just grins. "You'll see." And somehow, despite everything, that feels like a promise. You step ashore, the ground is warm, the vines hum, and the mountain breathes. The moment your feet hit the soil of the breathing mountain, you feel it, like stepping onto the chest of something ancient and asleep. It's not threatening, just vast. Every pebble is warm, every vine curls towards you like it remembers your name. Somewhere in the distance, bells chime, not from towers, but from the throats of birds. The vineyards stretch up and in toward the hollow heart of the mountain. This place shouldn't exist, not in a geographical sense, but then again, neither should half the things Dionysus has pulled out of his grape-colored hat. You start walking without being told to. Everyone does. The path curves and narrows, lined with smooth stones and tiny, oddly specific carvings. Wine jugs, masks, snails wearing laurels. You pass a bush that smells like philosophy and another that whispers bad poetry. "Are we going to the top?" You ask Dionysus, who's somehow walking backward with a bottle balanced on his head. "Nope," he says cheerfully. "We're going to the middle." Clia snorts. "Much safer than the top. Tops are for tragic endings." The path opens into a vast amphitheater carved entirely out of living vine and polished obsidian. No seats, just cushions scattered around like guests who never left. In the center, a stone table, round and glinting with quartz veins, waits under a chandelier made of hanging grapes. There's no sky here, just the inside of the mountain glowing faintly like embers behind eyelids. This is the Symposium of the Lost. Everyone drifts toward a cushion and settles in, You pick one that smells faintly of cinnamon and warm parchment. Kalea is already nibbling something round and mysterious. Dionysus slaps the table, and from nowhere platters appear. Figs, honeyed almonds, soft cheese wrapped in vine leaves, and, naturally, pitchers of wine so dark it seems to absorb light. "Is this dinner?" you ask. "It's always dinner here," Dionysus replies. "Except when it's breakfast or existential crisis." A hush falls, not imposed, but invited, like a soft velvet curtain drawn over your thoughts. Figures step from the shadows, not ghosts, not gods, just people. Historians still argue whether they're echoes of real mortals or archetypes playing dress-up, but they speak as though they remember their lives in vivid detail. The first is an old sailor with skin like driftwood. He talks about losing his crew to a siren's lullaby and finding his way home by following the scent of lemons. Then, a woman who claims she was once Helen of Troy's perfumer, describing in great detail the exact notes of oils mixed to mask the smell of war. You listen, transfixed. Each tale is a sip from a different bottle, flavored with longing, riddled with memory, steeped in myth. There's a rhythm to it, like waves lapping at the edge of dream. Then someone laughs. Not a big laugh, not disruptive. Just a soft, dry chuckle from a man in bronze armor. One strap broken, one sandal untied. "I died twice," he says, lifting a goblet. "Once in battle, once in bed. Only one stuck." You think about what story you'd tell if asked. About getting on a boat with a bunch of drunk immortals and hoping no one asked for your resume. About how the smell of crushed grapes now reminds you of both peace and danger. But you keep quiet. Sometimes silence is its own kind of participation. Dionysus leans in close. "You learning anything?" You nod, then shrug. "I think so." "Good," he says. "That's enough. It's not a pop quiz." There's a pause in the gathering. The mountain hums again, deep and slow. A woman in a cloak of woven reed stands and raises a flute. Not to play, but to point toward you. "This one hasn't spoken," she says. Everyone turns. Not accusingly. Just curiously. As if you've been the mystery ingredient in this vintage. You stand, heart thudding. "I don't have a story," you start. "At least not one with heroes or monsters." A pause. "But I do remember the first time I tasted coffee. It was bitter and muddy and weirdly electric, like someone had bottled curiosity." The amphitheater listens. "I remember thinking, this doesn't taste good, but I want more." Nods ripple through the crowd. "That's the trick, right?" you say. "It's not about liking something, it's about needing to keep tasting it, even when it doesn't make sense." Dionysus raises his goblet. "To nonsense." Everyone joins in. "To nonsense." The grapes above you tremble slightly and one drops, landing in your lap with a soft plop. It smells like laughter. As the feast continues, you notice something strange. The faces around the circle have started to blur. Not vanish, just soften. Like old photos in too much sun. Kalea is fading a little, her voice echoing half a beat behind her lips. Dionysus is still solid, but his outlines flicker like candlelight in a draft. "Is this part of the wine?" you ask. "No," says Dionysus gently. "This is part of the story. The forgetting part." You frown. "But I remember everything. Every weird twist. Every snack. Every boat disaster." "Good," he says. Now let it go." You close your eyes. Just for a moment. When you open them, the amphitheater is empty. No cushions, no food, just the table and the scroll. Still unopened, still breathing. You're alone. But somehow, not lonely. The mountain has gone quiet again, and the boat is waiting. You don't remember walking out of the mountain, but you're standing on the dock again, and the boat bobs lightly, as if impatient. The wine-dark sea laps gently at its side, and you notice the sails are tied loosely this time, more like curtains than actual navigational tools. You step aboard, and the wood greets you with a groan that feels oddly friendly. Like it remembers you. Like you've earned this spot. There's no sign of Clya or the masked revelers or even Dionysus. Just you, and a sky slowly turning mauve. You sit near the prow. The sea opens ahead, wide and uncertain. You don't know where you're going, which is oddly freeing. Nobody's asking you to row, or steer, or tell a story. The boat is moving on its own, guided by the current, or something even older. You glance behind. The mountain is already fading into mist like a dream you forgot to write down. There are no sails flapping dramatically, no soundtrack swells, no chorus of sirens serenading your exit. Just the creak of wood, the splash of oars you aren't using, and the faint smell of resin and salt. After a while, something small thumps against your foot. It's the grape, the one that fell in your lap in the amphitheater. Still perfectly round. Still smelling faintly of laughter. You hold it in your palm and consider eating it, but you hesitate. You don't want to lose the scent. It feels like your only souvenir. Around mid-journey, though time is hard to measure in a place that ignores clocks entirely, you spot something bobbing nearby. At first it looks like driftwood, then a barrel, then, a person, just floating. You pull them aboard without thinking. They're drenched and blinking and holding what looks like a scroll case. "Thanks," they rasp. "Thought I was going to end up in Tartarus with a sunburn?" You hand them a cloak you didn't realize you had. They wrap up and exhale deeply. "Where are we going?" they ask. You smile. "I was hoping you'd tell me." A chuckle. "Great. Another wine cruise with no itinerary." You both stare at the horizon for a while, the silence companionable. Eventually, they unscrew the scroll case and pull out a rolled parchment. "This was supposed to be for Hermes," they mutter, scanning it. "But the god of delivery has commitment issues." They pass it to you. You unroll it carefully. The ink glimmers faintly like moonlight on spilled water. It's a map, sort of. It has coastlines, yes, but also constellations. Scribbles in the margins. What might be recipes or jokes or both? There's a place marked "Do not open unless tipsy," another labeled "Here be regrets," and "Dead Center," a symbol you recognize. The sigil of Dionysus, 2 curved horns, a grape cluster, and, of all things, a comedy mask stuck to the side. Your companion leans over. "You've been there?" You nod. "I think so." "You planning to go back?" You fold the map, slowly, carefully. "Not right away." You stow the scroll in a dry part of the boat. The waves begin to shift color, from navy to pewter, like clouds remembering how to rain. A breeze brushes your cheeks with something like a question. You remember something Dionysus said about how stories aren't always about heroes. Sometimes they're about leftovers. The strange aftertaste of things. The bits that cling to your sleeves after the feast is done. You look down at your hands. They're stained purple. Not from blood, not from bruises, from grapes. Your companion, now humming an off-key lullaby, pulls out a cup from under the bench. They dip it into the water, yes, the actual seawater, and take a sip. "Still wine," they report. "This boat's got a good enchantment." You raise your brows. "Or a terrible plumbing system." They toast to that. The sea starts whispering again. Not loudly, not in words. Just sound. Like breath through reeds or distant applause. You lean against the side of the boat and stare at the water. You expect your reflection. Instead, you see dozens, hundreds of faces. Some familiar. Some impossibly ancient. Some laughing. Some crying. Some just watching. Historians still argue whether these visions come from the gods or the mind, whether they're psychic echoes or side effects of divine fermentation. But you know this. They feel true. Truer than textbooks. Truer than logic. And slowly you begin to speak. Not loudly. Not as a performance. Just Out loud, you tell your story. The whole thing. From the first step onto the wine boat, to the goat cheese dice game, to the mountain that grew out of nowhere. You tell it like you're remembering it for someone else. Like it needs to be said aloud or it'll curdle. Your companion listens quietly, sipping occasionally. When you finish, they raise their cup. To the one who came back. You toast with your invisible goblet. To the ones who didn't. And for a moment, the boat feels bigger. Roomier. Like it's carrying more than just you and a soggy stranger. Like it's holding stories now. Yours, theirs, and all the ones still bubbling to the surface. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to feel the movement. The boat keeps gliding, not fast, but steady. It knows the way. You wake, or you think you wake, to the smell of rosemary smoke and the sound of soft humming. The sea is gone now, replaced by grass that sways like it's listening. The boat rests gently on a meadow of gold and green, like some god plucked it from the water and set it down among the hills. Your companion is gone too. No splash, no farewell, no note tucked under a wine jug. Just absence. And the scroll case neatly leaned against the prow. You step off the boat and feel the ground press up against your soles. Not rudely, just reminding you it's there. The grass is warm, sun's sweet. Insects click softly in the distance. You recognize the scent of fermenting grapes somewhere beyond the rise. You follow it. The landscape has changed again, of course. It always does when Dionysus is involved. You're not surprised when the trees ahead part to reveal a small field, scattered with people lounging beneath arbors. Wine cups in hand, cheeks flushed with laughter. Someone's playing a flute badly, but no one seems to mind. There's a fire pit, too, where skewers of something delicious hiss quietly. You approach like you've been invited, which somehow you have. No one asks your name. No one cares where you've been. But someone hands you a clay cup and points to the fire. And suddenly your stomach remembers it exists. You sit on a log and sip. The drink is light, almost floral. Not the heavy ceremonial wine you expected. More like a liquid smile. Across the circle, a woman is telling a story. Something about a wedding that turned into a duel that turned into a goat chase. You're only half listening, but it doesn't matter. The way she speaks, the way the others react, it's not about the story itself. It's about the rhythm, the exchange, the permission to speak and be heard, even if you're making half of it up. This is what they meant, you think, when they said coffee houses would someday do the same. You laugh a little. Dionysus would hate coffee. Too jittery, not enough mystery. A young man with a wild beard plops down beside you. He offers you a cube of cheese impaled on a twig. Taste it, he says. It's from the moon. You do. It tastes like regular cheese, but softer somehow. You nod approvingly. He grins. I knew you'd get it. The sun leans lower in the sky, ambering everything. You lean back and close your eyes for a moment. Someone sets a wreath on your head. Ivy, or something pretending to be. There's a whispered toast. To the God who made getting lost sacred. You open your eyes again and find a stranger sitting cross-legged beside a patch of wildflowers. She's drawing something in the dirt with a stick, what looks like a labyrinth. No center, just winding paths. She catches your gaze. Some places don't have an end, she murmurs. You nod. You know, and then you see him again. Dionysus, not arriving with trumpets, not glowing, just there. Sitting beneath a fig tree, eating something purple-stained with his fingers. His eyes catch yours, and he lifts his cup slightly. You return the gesture. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to, but the air around him vibrates slightly like heat-off stones. A quiet reminder that this place is borrowed, that the magic here has a shelf life. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a foreign god, imported into Greece, or a native deity pushed to the margins, before roaring back in with a vine in each hand. You don't care. All you know is that he shows up when the story needs tilting sideways. You sit there a long time, listening, sipping, watching the sun forget how to be bold. And then, gently, it's time. You feel it like a shift in the air, like a lull in the music that doesn't restart. People start moving, not quickly but with purpose. Cups are set down, blankets folded. The fire burns lower, coals hissing under a last splash of wine. You don't speak to Dionysus as you leave. He's still under the fig tree, eyes closed now, breathing like someone remembering a song. But you carry his smile with you, tucked just behind your ribs. You walk back to the boat. Yes, it's there again, waiting like it never left. The scroll case is still dry. The grape is still whole. You climb aboard, sit near the prow. This time, the boat lifts into the air. No fanfare. Just upward drift. The field below shrinks, the people become dots, and the sky unfolds around you like a silken curtain. You're flying, not fast, not high, just enough to feel it. The stars blink awake one by one. The breeze brushes your cheek with fingers that smell of rosemary and old parchment, and for the first time in this entire strange voyage, you don't feel lost. You feel carried. And not alone. The night is full now, and the stars are brighter than you remember them ever being. Maybe they're closer? Maybe they're just paying attention. Either way, they keep you company as the flying boat coasts silently above the earth. The sail doesn't billow, there's no wind. Just motion without effort. The world turns slowly beneath you. Dark rivers winding like ribbons of ink, fields etched in moonlight, mountains crouched in shadow. You breathe deeply and feel the rhythm of the voyage inside you, as though your bones have grown used to this kind of magic. You don't ask where you're headed anymore. You've surrendered that part of your brain, the map drawing, destination craving part, to Dionysus, the god who made wandering holy. It's peaceful now. The kind of peace that doesn't ask questions. No decisions to make, no schedules to follow. Just the open sky and a vessel made of stories. You spot a campfire far below. A ring of light in the dark, with tiny figures gathered around it. Someone down there is telling a tale, gesturing with broad sweeps of the arm. You can't hear it, but you know the pattern. Tension, laughter, a twist at the end. Maybe it's about Dionysus again. Maybe it's about someone like you. You tilt your head and watch until the fire is just a flicker, and then even that disappears. The stars are the only witnesses now. You stretch out in the boat, your body molded to its gentle curve. The scroll case sits beside you, and you wonder if it ever really had writing in it. Maybe the scroll is blank. Maybe it only shows its text to people who truly need it. Or maybe the act of carrying it is the whole point. Like how you sometimes hold a book on your lap, just to feel wiser by osmosis. You reach over and unroll it slowly, expecting to find coded symbols, faded ink, ancient secrets. But it's empty. Not a single mark. And somehow that feels right. The god of theater, of masks and chaos and wine, was never going to hand you an instruction manual. His lessons don't come in straight lines or bullet points. They come in detours, laughter, misdirection, and endings that sneak up sideways. A light breeze brushes your face now, scented with lavender and ashes. You smile. Somewhere inside your mind a memory stirs. Of a museum guide once saying that ancient Greeks sometimes left blank tablets in temples, hoping the gods would write back. Or maybe they were offering silence as tribute. Historians still argue whether these were prayers, poetic gestures, or just bureaucratic mistakes. But tonight you decide it doesn't matter. A blank page can be a gift, an invitation. Below you, the sea returns. It's darker than ink, barely rippling. The boat begins to descend, slow and sure. You feel the shift in your stomach, but it's not unpleasant. More like the end of a long swing when gravity finally remembers your name. As you descend, you realize there's music again. Faint, but growing. It's not a flute this time. It's something stringed. Low, slow, and haunting. Maybe a lyre, maybe something older, made from the bones of a god and the tendons of a muse. The boat touches down on the shore with barely a sound. The sand is cool beneath your feet, the kind that stays soft no matter how long the tide's been out. A single torch flickers nearby, marking a path you hadn't noticed before. You follow it, of course you do. The path winds gently uphill through tall grass and stones that shine faintly under the moon. Somewhere to your left, an owl calls out. Once, then again. You raise your hand in silent salute. No reply, which is somehow funnier. You crest the hill and find a small stone structure. A shrine, maybe. Ivy clings to its sides. An amphora leans against the door, corked, sealed with wax stamped in the shape of a grapevine. The door is open. Inside, nothing but a cushion and a window looking out over the sea. You sit. The amphora stays unopened. You're not thirsty anymore. You stare out the window. You breathe. And you remember everything. Not in order, not clearly, but in sensation. The smell of burnt honey. The slap of fish against wood. The dizzying laughter of a crowd that wasn't entirely human. And Dionysus over and over in a dozen different forms. A stranger, a host, a goat, a god. He was never just one thing. Neither were you. You smile. And then you lie back. Let your body grow heavier. Let the quiet grow larger. Let the story end, not with a bang, but with a soft fade. Not everything has to resolve. Some myths are meant to lull,